3 months ago, I sold the company I'd built for 40 years, for $58 million. But instead of celebrating, I pretended to be broke. I wanted to know, if I lost everything, would my family still see me as their father, or just an empty wallet? The answer broke me in ways I can't even describe. But before we begin, let me just say this. If you enjoy stories like this, hit subscribe and tell me where you're listening from in the comments. My name is David Harper. I'm 65, living in an old wooden house by the Ashley River just south of Charleston, South Carolina. I used to think I'd spend the rest of my life in peace, reading books, growing vegetables, taking care of the flowers my wife once loved. But life's never that simple, especially when you suddenly become a millionaire. I didn't win the lottery. I didn't steal from anyone. I just sold a small tech company I built with my own hands over 40 years. When the deal went through, the bank confirmed it $58 million in my account, a number I never dared to dream of, even in my most exhausted nights. I sat there for hours staring at the screen. I didn't feel happy. I just felt empty. That company had been my whole life. I built it from a small garage, just me and my wife Helen. She passed away 12 years ago, lung cancer, and maybe I never really got over it. Every day after her funeral was the same work, eat dinner alone, sleep, repeat. Some nights I'd open the old photo album, look at her smiling in that faded floral dress, and wonder if she were still here. What would she think of me now, a rich old man, but completely alone? When news of the sale spread, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Not with congratulations, but with questions. Dad, what are you going to do with all that money? Could you lend me some capital to start my law office? How are you planning to divide the inheritance? I have 2 kids, Ethan and Lily. I love them, but they're no longer the little ones who held my hands at the beach. Ethan's a successful lawyer, now drives a fancy car, talks like someone who's always right. Lily's a gentle elementary teacher, but ever since she married Marcus, that smug guy with the fake smile, she's slowly disappeared behind his shadow. In recent years, I've realized they only come to me when they need something tuition for the grandkids, a down payment for a house, a cosign on a loan. No one ever asks, Dad, are you doing okay? They love me, I guess. But it's the kind of love that comes with conditions, as long as I can still give them something. So I started wondering, if one day I lost it all, what would they do? Would they comfort me? Or walk away? At first it was just a passing thought, but the more I thought about it, the more it burned inside me. After many sleepless nights, I wrote down a plan, pretend to be broke. I'd tell them I'd been scammed in an investment deal in Florida, lost everything, drowning in tax debt, and about to lose my house. I wanted to see who would stay when the lights went out. When I told the idea to Frank, my lawyer, he looked at me like I'd lost my mind. David, he said, you could retire in peace. Why torture yourself like this? I just smiled. Frank, I'm not afraid of losing money. I'm afraid of losing people. Then I started preparing for the biggest performance of my life. I moved all my money into an anonymous trust under Frank's control, kept just a few thousand in my personal account, enough to look broke. I canceled my credit card, sold the Lexus, bought an old 2003 pickup, and let the whole neighborhood see how bad things had gotten. I even pretended to get drunk in a local bar, so the rumor would spread. David Harper lost everything. It only took 2 days for the news to reach my family. The next afternoon, Ethan called. His voice was cold, almost detached. Dad, I heard the company went under. What's your plan? You want me to give you some legal advice? I said quietly. Maybe what I need right now is a little emotional support. Silence. Then Ethan said, I'll check my schedule. This week's pretty full. That was the moment I realized. This plan might hurt more than I thought. That night I stared out the window. The wind from the river was freezing. I saw my reflection on the glass, old, tired. But in my eyes there was still that faint, light determination. If the truth was going to hurt, at least I'd know I wasn't living a lie. I turned off the light, picked up my phone, and opened my contacts. The first name I called was Lily Harper. The little girl who once held my hand learning to ride her bike would be the first one I'd test. I didn't know how it would end, but I knew one thing for sure: from that moment on, no one in my family would know what was real and what was an act, except me. When I called Lily, my heart was pounding, like a young man about to confess his love. Not because I feared rejection, but because I was afraid of hearing the truth I'd been avoiding my whole life. She picked up right away. "Dad, I heard about the company. Is it true?" Her voice was trembling. I could hear dishes clinking in the background. She was probably cooking. "Yes," I said quietly. "I lost everything. I'm thinking maybe I should sell the house." Silence. Then a man's voice came through, Marcus, her husband, cutting into the call. "Helen's been gone 10 years, David. How old are you now? Maybe it's time you move into a nursing home instead of clinging to that old place." I smiled faintly. "That house was your mother's. I just want to keep a place that still has her memories." Marcus scoffed. "Memories don't pay the bills." That line cut deep. I heard Lily whisper, "Marcus, stop it." Then she spoke softly into the phone. "Dad, I'll come by this weekend. I'll bring some food." I thanked her, but inside I felt nothing. Not because of Marcus, I'd long accepted who he was, but because Lily didn't stand up for me. She stayed silent, just like she always had. I hung up and sat there for a long time. Outside, the wind from the river howled cold and heavy. In that wide, empty house, only the clock kept ticking, the sound of truth getting closer. 3 days later, I met Ethan, my oldest. We met at a fancy cafe. He liked the kind where people in suits talked about contracts and politics. Ethan was 15 minutes late. He sat down, opened his laptop, and said, "Dad, I only have 30 minutes. I've got a Zoom meeting right after." "That's fine," I said. "I just need a small favor." I took a deep breath. "I need to borrow $20,000, just temporarily, to cover property taxes." Ethan frowned and leaned back. "Dad, you know we're expecting our second baby soon. Money's tight. Besides, you always told me, never lend money unless you're sure it'll be paid back." "Right." I looked at him, tried to smile. "That's true. I did say that." He nodded. "Then I'm just following your advice." He smiled politely and called for the check. I sat there staring at the son I once walked to school, taught how to tie a tie. He was successful, confident, and cold enough to make me shiver. As he left, I overheard him whisper to the waitress, "If he comes back again, call me. I'm worried someone might be scamming him." He thought I'd lost my mind. Maybe in his eyes, the man who once taught him everything had become a burden. That night, I got a call from my older brother, Robert. "David, I heard you went bankrupt. Told you not to trust those Florida brokers." His tone carried a hint of satisfaction. "If you really need help," he continued, "I can buy that Riverside land from you. Market's down, but I'll pay cash, fast deal." I understood immediately. He wasn't helping. He was circling like a vulture, trying to grab the same property I refused to sell him 15 years ago. "I'll think about it," I said. He chuckled. "Think fast. Nobody's lining up to buy a dying man's house." When he hung up, I sat still for a long time, even my own brother, waiting for his chance to twist the knife. Days passed. The neighbors started whispering. Someone said the bank was about to seize my home. A man I barely knew asked, "David, want me to recommend a good bankruptcy lawyer?" The rumor spread like wildfire. And then, what I feared most happened. Lily didn't show up that weekend. Instead, she sent a short text. "Dad, Marcus said this week's too busy. I'll come later." After that, nothing. No calls. No messages. That's when loneliness finally took shape. It looked like an old house in the wind, creaking, sighing, waiting to collapse. That night, I went out to the porch, opened my old laptop, and clicked on a folder labeled Project Truth. Inside were all the recordings and hidden videos I'd been collecting for weeks. Every call, Every conversation secretly recorded through a tiny mic sewn into my jacket. I didn't want to believe they were really like this. But evidence doesn't lie. I watched Ethan talk about me, Robert scheming to buy my land, Marcus mocking me behind my back. When the video ended, a cold realization settled in. Not one of them had asked if I was okay. Not one. I whispered to myself, my voice shaking. Maybe it's time to find out who's still family and who never was. Tomorrow I'd drive into town to visit someone no one in my family would ever expect. Benji Morales, the young mechanic who used to work for me years ago. I didn't know why, but something deep inside told me he might be the only one who hadn't changed. And I was right, because that visit opened the door to something I never saw coming. The next morning I drove my old pickup out of Charleston. The road west was covered in fog, and to me it felt like a line separating the people who once knew me from a world where no one did. I was no longer David Harper, the wealthy businessman, just an old man looking for a place to rest his tired bones. My destination was a small garage in Somerville, about 40 minutes away, where a young mechanic named Benji Morales worked. Years ago, when Benji was still in college, I knew he was struggling to pay tuition. So I lent him $5,000 and told him, "Pay me back when you can. No rush." A year later, he did with a handwritten note that said, "Thank you not just for the money, but for believing in me." I still keep that note. When my truck pulled up to the garage, the smell of oil and hot metal hit me, just like the old days. Benji was lying under a car. When he saw me, he jumped up with a smile so genuine, I'd almost forgotten such smiles existed. "Holy hell, Mr. Harper, you're still driving." "Thought you retired already." I laughed weakly. "Retired, yeah. Probably from life itself, too." He frowned. "What kind of talk is that? You look pale. Something wrong?" I sighed, slipping back into my role. Made a bad investment. Lost everything. Just looking for somewhere to stay. For a few days. Before the bank takes the house. Benji went quiet for a few seconds. Then he dropped his rag and said, "If you don't mind, you can crash in the spare room behind the garage. It's not fancy, but at least it doesn't leak." I looked at him stunned. No hesitation, no questions, no judgment. Just, "You need a place. You got one." That feeling, it's hard to describe. I nodded, trying to keep my voice steady. "I don't want to be a burden." "You helped me when I had nothing," he said. "Now it's my turn." My throat tightened. That night, Benji brought me a hot meal, a plate of beef stew and rice, a bowl of bean soup, simple, warm, real. It had been so long since I'd eaten something that tasted like home. Under the soft yellow light, he told me about his mother, a Mexican immigrant who worked her whole life to raise him. She'd died in an accident 2 years ago. His voice trembled, but there was no bitterness. And in his eyes, I saw the same light I'd once seen in Helen, the light of someone who lives out of kindness, not gain. The days that followed were quiet. I stayed at the garage, helped Benji clean tools, swept the floor, fixed small things. At night, I wrote in my journal, not about money, but about people. Every line felt like another confession, ashamed of Ethan, of Lily, and of myself, for raising children who'd forgotten compassion. One afternoon, while I was carrying a box of oil, I suddenly felt dizzy. The world spun. Then, nothing. I woke up in a hospital bed. Benji was sitting beside me, eyes red. "You had a mild heart attack," he said. "Doc said it's lucky I got you here in time." I managed a weak smile. "You brought me here." "Of course. I told them you were family. Otherwise they wouldn't have admitted you so fast." Family. That word echoed in my mind. Not Ethan, not Lily, not anyone with my blood. Just this young man who owed me nothing. I held his rough, warm hand. "You've saved me twice, Benji. Once with kindness, and once with your courage." He chuckled. "Mr. Harper, I just did what anyone should do." After that day, I knew my little experiment was over. Not because I wanted to expose anyone, but because I'd found my answer, And it wasn't in my children. It was in this young mechanic who still believed in good. When I was discharged, Benji insisted on driving me back to the garage. He joked, "Quit pretending to be broke, Mr. Harper. The way you calculate gas mileage in your head, you're no poor man. You're hiding something, aren't you?" I laughed, the first real laugh I'd had in years. "You're sharper than I thought, Benji." He smiled. "Nah, I just read faces. And yours doesn't look like someone who's lost everything." His words froze me for a second. Maybe he knew, but he didn't ask, didn't pry. He just trusted. That night, I sat alone outside the garage watching the streetlight shimmer across puddles. I thought of Helen, of the days when we had nothing but were happy anyway. And I realized people like Benji are proof that kindness still exists. I'd just been searching in the wrong place. That night I opened my old laptop, typed into the Project Truth folder. The plan is over. I've found someone worth starting over for. Tomorrow I'd go home, not to beg for love, but to end this act in front of everyone who turned their backs. I drove back to Charleston on one of those rare, clear mornings. The wind from the Ashley River swept through the willow trees, carrying that faint, salty smell. The same one I remembered from years ago, when Helen and I stood at the docks dreaming of a peaceful life. The house was still the same. Only the man walking into it had stopped believing in something called family. Benji insisted on driving me back even when I said I could handle it. On the way, he said just one thing. "Whatever's about to happen, don't let anger take away the good in you." I didn't answer. I just nodded. He didn't know that today. I wasn't just coming home. I was coming back to end the game I started. For weeks, I'd been preparing everything. Every recording, phone calls, messages, conversations, all stored on a single hard drive. I'd already sent a copy to my lawyer, Frank, just in case something went wrong. Tonight, I invited the whole family over, told them it was about finances and inheritance. They thought I was dying. But the truth is, they were about to face the death of trust. Around 6 p.m., everyone arrived. Ethan came first, shirt crisp, jaw tight. Lily followed, glancing around nervously. Marcus wore that fake smile he always had. And Robert showed up last. With a bottle of wine like this was a party. I was already seated in the living room, laptop open on the table. No one said hello. Marcus spoke first. "Before we start, if this is about your will, I think Ethan should handle the legal stuff. Make it more transparent." I smiled faintly. "Thanks, Marcus. But tonight isn't about a will. Tonight, it's about the truth." The room fell silent. I hit play. Ethan's voice came first from that cafe meeting. "Never lend money unless you're sure you'll get it back. Dad taught me that." Then Robert's cold and sharp. "No one wants to buy a dying man's house." And Marcus, "Laughing memories don't pay the bills." Each word cut like a blade. Faces drained of color. Ethan jumped up furious. "Dad, you recorded us. That's an invasion of privacy." I looked at him calmly. "No, Ethan. It's proof. Proof of what conditional love sounds like." Lily started crying. "Dad, I didn't mean," I stopped her. "You don't need to explain. I've heard enough. Not one of you asked if I was okay. Not one." The air grew heavy. I stood, opened a drawer, and pulled out a thick envelope. "I lied to you. I was never bankrupt." Everyone froze. Robert dropped his glass. Marcus's mouth fell open. "The company sold for $58 million, I continued. All of it is in a trust managed by Frank." Ethan shouted, "Jesus, Dad, why would you hide that from us?" I met his eyes, cold, steady, because I needed to know who'd stay when there was nothing left to stay for. Lily bowed her head. Marcus looked away. Robert forced a laugh. "All right, David, you win. We all messed up okay. Now split the money and end this joke." I stared right at him. "No, Robert, this isn't a joke anymore. And the winner isn't me." I took out another envelope. "This belongs to the only person who helped me, without asking for anything in return. The one who saved me, when all of you turned your backs." His name is Benji Morales. All eyes turned toward the doorway. Benji stood there, cap in hand, oil stains on his shirt, unsure what to do. I walked over, placed a hand on his shoulder. The $50 million trust will be managed by him. Part of it will fund a training center. The rest will be his legally. Ethan jumped up, shouting, "Who the hell is he to deserve that I looked straight at him? He's the only one who called me family. When this house saw me as nothing but a walking wallet." The room fell silent. Only the wind outside broke it. Lily came closer, tears streaming down her face. "Dad, I'm sorry." I gave her a tired, gentle smile. "I forgive you, but I can't forget." Then I turned to Benji and nodded. "Let's go. There's nothing left for me here." As the door closed behind us, I heard Ethan's voice, breaking. "Dad, please don't go. We were wrong." But I didn't look back. Outside, the sunset burned red across the sky. I took a deep breath, feeling lighter than I had in years. Benji asked quietly, "Do you regret it?" I smiled, eyes fixed on the horizon. "No, Benji. The truth's never easy, but at least now I know who really cared." That was the last time I saw them, the Harpers, the family I loved but could never trust again. And Benji. From that day on, he became the son I never had. That night, after leaving the house, Benji and I drove along the river in silence. Charleston at night was strangely peaceful. Streetlights shimmered on the water, like fading memories sinking beneath the surface. Benji didn't ask anything. He didn't have to. He just drove, glancing at me now and then, as if afraid I might disappear. I sat quietly watching everything fade behind us. The house, the garden, the family photos on the wall. All of it. A relic of a man who once believed family was forever. Now I had only one thing left, the truth. And one person not bound by blood, but by heart. We stopped at a small roadside cafe. I ordered 2 cups of black coffee. The steam fogged my glasses as I said softly, "Benji, it took me too many years to realize. Sometimes family isn't something you're born into. It's something you find." He smiled, eyes warm. Then I guess I found my father the other way around. His words tightened something deep inside me. Not just emotion, but the quiet understanding that a new chapter had begun, one built on gratitude, not noise. A year later, my life was completely different. I left Charleston and bought a small wooden house by a lake in Asheville, North Carolina. No familiar faces, no noise. Just pine trees, clean air, and peace, the kind I once thought only existed in dreams. Each morning I brewed coffee, opened the window, and listened to the wind through the trees. No one knocked asking for money. No one mentioned inheritance. Sometimes Benji would drive more than 3 hours just to have lunch with me, then head back. I told him he was crazy. He laughed. "I'm just doing what people should do, when someone once believed in them." Benji opened the Harper Project, a free vocational training center for underprivileged youth. On the wooden sign outside, he carved the words, "For those who were given nothing but still chose to give." The first time I saw that sign, I couldn't hold back my tears. In that moment, I knew the money had finally found its rightful place. As for my family, Ethan called a few times. His voice was hoarse. "Dad, I know I messed up, but please, I don't want to lose you over money." I answered gently. "You never lost me over money, Ethan. You lost me when you chose greed over heart." Lily sent a handwritten letter. Her handwriting trembled. "I'm too ashamed to face you, but I miss you. If someday you want to talk, I'll be waiting." I folded the letter, placed it in a drawer. I forgave them, but I never went back, because forgiveness doesn't always mean starting over. Sometimes it's just a period at the end of an unfinished sentence. I aged faster than I expected. The doctor said my heart wasn't in danger, but I could feel it slowing down, as if my body too was ready to rest after all those storms. I wasn't afraid of dying. I was only afraid of leaving without saying thank you enough. So I wrote one last letter and left it with Frank, my lawyer. It said I once thought money could make people better, but it only shows who they truly are. I lost my family, but I found humanity. If you're reading this, my children, don't hate your father. Remember, this money doesn't change people, it just reveals them. I signed it, sealed the envelope, and wrote on the front, "To be read after I'm gone." One autumn morning I sat by the lake. Sunlight danced across the water, lighting up the wrinkles on my face, peaceful ones. Benji was packing tools into his truck, getting ready to leave for the center. He waved. "I'll be back next week. Don't forget to eat, old man." I laughed, raising a hand. "Go on, son. The world still needs men like you." As his truck disappeared down the road, I watched the reflection on the lake and felt my heart grow light. For the first time in years, I felt truly rich. Not because of $58 million, but because I'd finally learned I hadn't lived in vain. I closed my eyes, breathing in the scent of pine, and thought, if these are my last days, I only hope to leave behind one truth: love, while you still can. Because sometimes you have to lose everything to see who never left. A year after my passing, Benji held a small memorial by the lake. No suits, no speeches, just quiet remembrance. He said to the small crowd, "He taught me that family doesn't need blood, just trust." The wind swept softly across the water as Frank read my final words aloud. "Wealth doesn't test others, it reveals them." And that's how my story ended, not in loss, but in truth. Because in the end, being rich isn't about how much you have. It's about who stays when you have nothing left. If you were in my shoes, would you dare to test the ones you love? Share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for listening to my story, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that make you rethink what love and trust truly mean.